Hello, and Dr. Ron England, and welcome to this video on using database tools. What I'm going to do in this video is I'm going to duplicate some of the work that I did on a previous video, only this time the video itself is going to do the same type of work, but I'm going to do it in code versus doing it with the built-in objects. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to show the previous code from another example where I actually had created this tool for viewing the information from the CMS database. And this is all from a previous video, so I'm not going to go over this in a lot of detail. But the way this worked was I could select a state, and it would show me the scores that I had done from the database, done with some views and some stored procedures of the different scores for the individual hospitals. Now, this was all done with automated objects, and I would reference you to the previous video on how to do this. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and take I'm going to create a new page, and all this that I just showed you was done without writing a single line of code. It was all done just with standard references of just using the objects and pointing them to each other in the correct way. So what I've done here is I've created a page called Select State, and this is just a created page, and I'm going to actually go to here and show the design. It's very simple. What I'm going to do for this is I'm going to have one page which will have the drop-down box and some code and a button. And you'll click on the button, and it will take you to a second page, and then that page will show the grid with the information in it. So I'm kind of doing this in two pieces. So sorry about that. So here's what this looks like. I basically have the drop-down list. I have a button here. If I were to double-click on the button, it would take me to the code behind. Now this is where I'm going to put all the work, and I'll do this in multiple videos. The first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to populate in code, not using the tools, but in code. I'm going to populate the drop-down list. Now this is going to be a little bit trickier to do in code here. First thing I have to do is I have to go up here, and I need to put some usings up here. Now I already threw in here a using system.data, which will let me use the data objects, and I'm also going to put in using system.configuration. Now that allows me to use some of the objects that will be available in the libraries within C# that I'll need to use. And the first thing that I need to do is I need to actually get the connection string, and I did the connection string previously. Now if you've created the connection string and you've put it in your web config file, in this case it is, I have a connection string here that I called patient survey connection string that I put right here. I have this, and I could pull it. Now I've got a number of ways I can do this. One of the things I can simply do here, and I'll do this for simplicity, is I'm going to just take this, and I'm going to come over here to select state, and I'm going to create a string, and I'm going to call this C connection string, and I'm going to set it equal to the string that I just copied over there, and that's my connection string. Now, see if you can look real close. Oops, string, C string equals. Okay, now if you look right here, you'll actually see that there's a backslash, and here, well, backslashes are escape sequences, and escape sequences is why you see the little red underline right here. Escape sequences will try to actually replace that character with the equivalent escape character. So what I need to do is I need to go ahead and make this a string literal. And to do that, in C or C#, you put an @ symbol in front of the string, and what it does is it says that it's just going to use the string as a literal. It won't try to replace any escape sequences here, and then I need to put a semicolon at the back. So now I've created this string, which is my connection string. So now I'm going to create some objects here. And one of the objects I'm going to create here is a SQL connection. I need to connect to the database. So I'm going to create a SQL connection, and the SQL connection and I should be picking this up, connection. Okay, I'm not getting it, and let's see, SQL connection. Well, you know, if I don't see it, then what I can do is I can actually work through, oh, you know why? Because I actually, if I look at my using here, system.data, I have to start with system.data. So SQL connection is actually within the library SQL client. So I have to start with SQL client, and then I can create a SQL connection. So, well, that didn't work either. So I'm going to just do the whole thing then. System dot data dot SQL client dot SQL there we go, SQL connection. So I'm going to create a connection here, and you did this in the other example. You just did it with the tools here. This is going to declare an object called a SQL connection. What a SQL connection does, allows you to create a connection to the database. So I'm going to name the SQL connection. So I'll call it scon. So that's my SQL connection, and I'm going to instantiate the object. I have to create this object so I can use the connection. The connection will be an instantiated object. In the programming world, objects have to be instantiated before they can be used. So I'm going to create it as a new, and now I've got to do the whole thing, system.data SQL connection. And when you do this, you actually have a number of things that you can do. And here's this little pop-up that IntelliSense gives me is the constructors. And there's two constructors that go with creating a SQL connection. One of them is with nothing passed to it, and the other one is allows you to pass a connection string to it. Well, I created a connection string here. Okay, it's right here, CSTR. So that's what I want to use, CSTR. Whoops. So now I've created a connection string called scon, and that connection string actually has the connection string that goes with it. Now, a SQL connection is more than just the text of a connection string. It actually has other properties, but the property I'm interested in is that it can connect to the database. Okay, I've got my connection. The next thing I need to do, and I can do this in 2 steps or 1 step. 1 step is what I'm going to use, but if I did it in 2 steps, what I could create is a SQL command, and that command would be something that would literally hold the command that I wanted to send to the database. Okay, well, I'm going to actually do this with just a SQL adapter because I can pass the command string directly to the adapter. Since it's making me type out the whole thing, I'll do that. I'll do system.data. Now, I need to create a data adapter, which is going to be a SQL client, and I go here to a data adapter, and I'll just call this SADPT, SAdapter, equals new. Okay, now I can create the SQL, and I'm going to do the same thing again. I'm going to use the constructor to put the whole thing together. Now, I'm familiar with these constructors, so I know that I've got a constructor that allows me to give it the text, the actual text of the command I want to do, and the connection. So I'm going to actually type in the text I want. What I want to do here is I want to select distinct. This is my SQL, and I want, in this case, the state from raw data. Okay, that, by the way, if you watch the other video, was exactly the same string I used to select the information I wanted to put into the combo box there, and I also need to pass it the connection. So scon. So now I've got an adapter called SADPT that uses the connection and also uses the actual SQL command that I wanted to use. And now all I got to do is use the adapter to put information into a data set or into a data table. Well, I'm going to create an object called a data set here. I'll call it ds equals new data set. Okay, so now a data set is an object that actually holds the results of a query, and all I have to do to put the results of the query in here is say A see my adapter was SADPT, and then I simply fill the data set. Now, what this will do is it will take the adapter, which has the connection and the SQL string, and it will take the results of that and it will put it inside my data set. The only thing I got to do now left here is I need to take my drop-down list and I need to bind it to this. So I'm going to go DDL, there's select state. Okay, I need to set the data source. The data source is going to be equal to the data source that I created for it, which was DS. That's the data set. Okay, I need to tell it a few other things, like I need to tell it that the data text field, we did this before, we just did this with a wizard. The data text field is going to be equal to state. Then I'm going to create that. Now I'm also going to make the data value field be the same thing. There's value field equals state. And then I'm going to bind it, which is data bind. And that's method, so I got to put parentheses in there. And that should fill in the whole thing. So let's save that. Let's run it. I'll bring this over so you can see if it worked. And notice, now it doesn't do anything else, but this is going to be, what I've done is, with code, I've filled in this drop-down list. So that's part one of what we're doing here. So now I'm going to go ahead and stop the debugging, and I'm going to stop the video here, and then I'll continue this with part two. Hello, I'm Dr. Ron Eglin, and this is part two of the CMS example for doing the coding. And what I'm going to do in this, what I did in the previous example was, and I'll show you here, is I used the CMS database, used the command select distinct state from raw data to have a drop down here where I pulled down the different drop downs. Okay, now what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to go ahead and create a second page, pass the state over to the other page, and show the results in a data grid. So first step to do is to create the page that I'm going to show the stuff in. So, and that's where I'm going to start with. So I'm going to go add, new item, and I'd like to just do a web form, and I'm going to call this score results. And there's my page. I'm going to pull up my toolbox, and I'd like a nice little data grid view. Will work perfectly for what I want to do here. So I'm going to drop that in, and I can go over to the design mode over here, and all I'm going to do in the design mode is I'm just going to make it pretty. Let's see. Let's not mess with the amp. Let's not mess with that. I'll just use the auto format. Autumn. There we go. Done. Okay. Go back over here to source, and that did a whole bunch of stuff here. It did to the grid view. But all that is just formatting. So what I have to do here, and let's see. And what I'm going to also do here is I'm going to go ahead and add one button. Let's go back up. Oops, put the button. I want to put the button in the form. And I'm going to say, I'm going to call this BTN done. Now, if I double click on that, it'll give me the BTN done. I also got the page load, so I click on the page to get that. But that's the page I'm going to pull up. Now, I need to pass the stuff over to the page, so I'm going to go back over to the select state page that I had here, and I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit of code to do what I want to do here. So, first thing I need to do is, if I click on this button, I want to pull the state. So I'm going to create a string, the result string, and it's going to be DDL select state, selected value. I want the value that they that they had selected. I'm going to go ahead and put that into the session variable. This is just one way to do this, session add. What the session is it allows me to take variables from one page, put them into a common location within what's called the session variable, which is in every page, and I can pull those later on. But now I want to make it so that the session maintains the state that was added. I'm going to give it the name state, and I am going to pass it the string that was passed over. Now I should probably put a little bit of error checking and other things in here, but I really not going to at this point. I am going to come over here to my score results, and I'm going to save this page so I've got it saved. Come back over here, and now I'm going to send, and this is called a response dot redirect. I'm going to actually send, response dot redirect. I'm going to send control of the program to another page, and in this case I'm going to go ahead and send it to score result .aspx. I'm going to have it click and go to the other page. So if I hit save here and I run this, and nice and slow, and I pick this and I hit done, it goes to the other page. But it's saying, okay, score result cannot be found. That might be because I misspelled it, but that's an easy fix. I'm going to go back here to debug, stop debugging, and because it was score results. Okay, so I picked up that error and fixed it. Now I'm going to go over here to, I've got my score result with my beautiful guy here. Got this where I'm going to actually do some stuff in the page load. And I'm going to do a little bit different style of coding as last time so I can show you some of the different styles. I used system.data before. Now I really only need SQL client objects inside of system.data in this case. And I'm just going to, whoops, I guess I'm not going to do that. There was a little trick there, but I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to go with SQL client, so I can use the SQL client objects. And all I want to do is I want to get the value back from the session variable that I sent over. So I need to do that. So I need to make another string. I'm going to call this S result. I know what I'm going to do. I'll just call this string state equal to session. Okay, there's a nice little shortcut for the session, which is the index. So I'm going to pull that. I need to have it as a string. So now I've got that. And of course, if it passed over nothing, it would crash. But in this case, like if the variable is never set and you went to this page, the page would crash because there's nothing there. Now I need to go ahead and I need to create the objects that I need to bind it to. I need to bind this to this data grid. So as I have this grid view that I need to bind to. So remember the objects we did before. I need the connection. Well, here's a beauty. I can come back over here to this, and I can take these 3 lines of code that I created from the previous example, including the data set creation, back over to here. And the difference here is that, let's see, oh, you know what? And I can't use a data set because the data set's used in system.data. So I need that. Its object is not in SQL client, it's in system.data. So I need system.data and I need SQL client. Okay, so now that's going to work. And that little red showed me that. Now my query is going to change here. My SQL adapter, I want to select star from, and over in my database I created a view called scores. So I'm going to select from scores where, and now I have a where clause where state is equal to, and it goes into little quotes. Now I have to have this state, which I put into CSTR. to string. And now I got to close this, because remember, it's got to be a valid. I have to send over a valid SQL, so that's going to be select star from scores where state equals, and then I'm going to have an open small paren, CSTR, which should be the state that was passed over, close paren, with the connection. Okay, the data set should be created. It should be filled. Now, what I need to do is I need to set for my grid view, which was grid view 1. I need to set the data source. And that data source is going to be equal to the data set because that's a bindable object. Now I'm going to go ahead and bind it. So now I've gone ahead and set the whole thing up. What I've got here is I read the S state over from here. Oh, you know what? I put the wrong one in there. CSTR is the connection string, not the state string. That would have caused some problems. Okay. S state. Now I got the right one in the SQL. Hopefully somebody caught that before I even did this. And you know what? I'm not going to do anything with the button done right now. So I'll save that. Now I'm going to go back over to my original select state here. Okay, I'm going to run this. I'm going to pick a state, say Colorado, hit done. Should jump over to the one, and there I go with Arkansas. Okay, well, if I go back and I pick Arizona, I'm going to come over, and there I am with Arkansas. Okay, let's try one more time. Okay, and if I pick Arkansas, I come over here, and it has Arkansas. Okay, well, what happened here? Okay, this is to demonstrate, okay, we want to find out what happened with the variable being passed over. So let's take a look and see if we can figure it out. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and turn debugging off, and this is where I want to demonstrate that you can use, okay, here, if I go into the code here, okay, what actually got passed over? Now I'm going to hit F9, oops, oh, sorry, F9 is not going to work because my screen capture routine stops it from working. I'm going to go ahead and put debug, okay, toggle breakpoint. Okay, now I've got a breakpoint here. Okay, now what I can do is I can go back over to this, start it, pick the state I want, come back over. Okay, it should come back over and it should trigger the breakpoint here. Now, and it's not triggering my breakpoint. Yep, there it is. Okay. Now, what I can do here is, if I look here, I can see that S state is equal to AK. Okay, session state to string. Well, that tells me that it did pass over S state. So now I need to go back a little bit further. Okay, I can go ahead and debug and I can untoggle that breakpoint because I know by the time it gets over here, it's just passing over Arkansas. Okay, well, let's go back to the original spot where it's pulling the stuff, which is right here, and let's see what's getting passed over here. So I'm going to put a breakpoint here. Debug, toggle breakpoint, all right? And I know what the problem is here, but I'm going to actually take you through this. Okay, so I'm going to run through this again. Now it shouldn't hit the breakpoint this time. Bring it back over here, pull this down, Colorado, hit done. Okay, now if I go to RSTR here, it is getting Arkansas. Well, I didn't select Arkansas. What's going on here? Well, here's what's going on here. Debug, stop debugging. And this is a very common error. What happens is when you click that done, it runs through a postback and it repopulates this data source here. So it's repopulating it. So we have to tell it that when something occurs, don't do that. Okay, don't go back and repopulate everything because it's just going to read the value that was set before. So there's a way to do that. I can put an if around this, not is postback Okay, and I'm going to come down here at the bottom and I'm going to close this. So only run this if the page is not a postback. No, don't run it every single time somebody does an action. Okay, now I'm going to go through, and that's a very common thing to do in here, is that you need to, you're going to be setting up the page with setup, but you're going to have to read stuff off the page. Anytime somebody triggers an action, it's going to run through that again. And I could actually have seen that if I'd stuck some breakpoints up in here. I could see, oh wait, it's running every time I click the done button. All right, so now I'm going to go ahead and do a build. Oh, sorry, start again. Okay, now my page should come up. Now remember, I kept the breakpoint there. So now I pick, let's say I pick California and click done. Okay, I've now come over to this being toggled. But now, notice it's the CA, not the Arkansas, the very first value. If I hit F5 again, it will jump through, and now I've got the California in here, and it worked just fine. So, with that in mind, with what I just showed you, that you need to set that post back. Okay, it's also very good practice to make sure that on the other page that you created, that you didn't go ahead and reset each time. This is not, this page is being called directly, it's not being post back, it's post back. Open, close, and only do this if this page is not a post back. This won't have any effect on the functionality of it with what we've demonstrated here, but at least it's good practice to say, okay, you need to know if the page is posting or not posting back. So, showed you a number of very good concepts, things to put together here, and this concludes the CMS example for what we're doing in code here. However, if I do have questions with different assignments, I'll be putting up other videos. Thanks.